Good morning, everyone, and thank you all for joining us today. Let me begin by thanking all of the election judges and poll workers here in Illinois and across the country who facilitated a smooth, fair, and democratic process. I went to the South Side on Election Day to deliver some midday treats to the people who were running balloting in a precinct there. And there were 4 young people working alongside six older women, learning the ropes from some experienced old hands. And it reminded me that our elections truly are in the hands of the people, and that the youth of our nation are our best hope for maintaining a strong democracy. It's no small thing to volunteer to work a polling location in these times. And I want those who stepped up across the state of Illinois to know that they have a sincere thank you and sincere gratitude from the governor. I also want to thank all the Illinoisans who voted in this election. Casting a vote is making a wish for the future. Sometimes you live to see that wish fulfilled, and sometimes you must accept that your vote is a down payment on a house that you may wait a long time to finally live in. I'm thinking a lot today about my mother. For most of my life, I've been involved in public policy and democratic political campaigns as a volunteer, as a supporter, as a candidate, and that's most especially because of my mother. When I was just a little kid, I was conscripted by her to stuff political flyers into envelopes while my older brother and sister addressed and stamped them. We watched as Sue Pritzker organized political campaigns out of our living room at a time when women weren't even allowed to have credit cards without a male cosigner. I think about how she supported causes for women's rights, for gay rights, for civil rights, back when it must have seemed like the pace of change was heartbreakingly slow. The memory of my mother has helped to give me some understanding that the hope that American women have for our country is not a new manifestation, but an old inheritance. It has been nurtured and cared for over generations, passed down with the kind of persistence that you need to continue putting logs on a fire you may not get to see lit in your lifetime. I know that there are a lot of women out there this week, especially young women, asking themselves if they will ever get to see a female president. And to them, I want to say, I too am tired of having to explain to my daughter and to my son too, that eventually the time will come, but not now. Yet here we are again. A majority of women are not the only people who are disappointed in the results of the election on Tuesday. For many Illinoisans, there's a considerable amount of uncertainty and unease about the road ahead. And I'm here today to remind people that no matter the storm that we face, Illinois will always strive to make you welcome and safe and protected. Chaos, retribution, and disarray radiated from the White House the last time Donald Trump occupied it. Perhaps this time may be different. But if it isn't, Illinois will remain a place of stability and competent governance. Through his repeated attacks on workers and women, on immigrants and people with disabilities, and our LGBTQ plus community, Illinois has remained a place where rights are protected and that everyone can call home. Despite his threats to health care coverage and educational opportunity and a fair minimum wage, Illinois will continue to invest in the well-being and prosperity of our people. Donald Trump will be our next president. He won the election, and we must all be willing to work together for the common good. In the months ahead, we should all be focused on the peaceful transition of power, even if Donald Trump didn't afford that to his successor. But we also must be focused on the defense of our entire Constitution, not just the parts that demand the peaceful transfer of power. While I was certainly surprised by Tuesday's results, I was not unprepared. Having fought through the headwinds of the first Trump administration, the General Assembly and I took proactive steps to plan for the potential of a second Trump presidency and protect our residents from the damage that it may attempt to cause. We enshrined reproductive rights and other healthcare protections into the state constitution via the Reproductive Health Act to protect women from his Supreme Court's extreme anti-choice agenda. We built a path to an abundant, clean energy future in an attempt to protect our children and our planet from his reversion toward lower environmental standards that will pollute our air and water. We reaffirmed labor rights and nearly doubled the minimum wage to beat back Trump's consistent assault on American workers. We invested in advanced manufacturing and electrification and new high-tech industries to attract new businesses and jobs to Illinois and ensure that tariffs and trickle-down economics do not define our state's economic future. Illinois will continue to be a refuge for those whose rights are being denied elsewhere, women seeking reproductive health care, immigrants searching to work hard for a better life, LGBTQ Americans looking for welcome and protection, and people with disabilities whose civil and human rights are under attack. Over the years ahead, we'll do more than just protect against the possible reversion to an agenda that threatens to take us backward. We will continue to advance a positive, productive, and inclusive agenda of our own, one that brings opportunity to Illinois and helps uplift the nation as a whole. One final note. People have often said that I'm a happy warrior, and I've always taken seriously my role as a happy warrior on behalf of this state. Even today, when I'm struggling with many of the difficult questions this election poses, my optimism for the future remains undiminished. Governing is hard work, but it's also important and challenging work. I refuse to let it grind me down. Setting the example for us all are the hardworking and decent people of Illinois who refuse to let the challenges they face grind them down. To anyone who intends to come take away the freedom and opportunity and dignity of Illinoisans, I would remind you that a happy warrior is still a warrior. You come for my people, you come through me. I look forward to taking your questions, but first I'm going to hand this podium over to a fellow warrior and a powerful defender of the people of Illinois, Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Governor, for your guiding light. While I'm always honored to serve by your side today, I am especially grateful to live in Illinois and to be your constituent. I want to echo the Governor's gratitude for every person across the country who worked to ensure an efficient and honest election. On more than one occasion, you have heard me express being grateful for the shoulders of my ancestors upon which I stand. Today, I am testing my own shoulders' capacity to bear weight. I'm practicing steadiness while the floor beneath my feet quakes. As a mother to 4 daughters, one of whom is under the age of 10, I have literally carried the weight of the future on my back. And at this moment, it seems like I can almost feel their breath on my neck as they inch higher, preparing to assume their place on my shoulders as they follow in my footsteps. And while the future is murky, I am sure of this. Illinois' shoulders are strong and will remain firm as we continue the work of building the future that all of our children deserve. For 6 years, Governor Pritzker and I, along with our partners in the General Assembly, have advanced policies and practices that were designed to withstand the winds of opposition. This was intentional because we knew that whatever happened on the national landscape, we would be proactive in protecting our people. The outcome of this election does not erase the fact that Illinois has already expanded reproductive care, protected LGBTQ plus people, banned assault weapons, protected workers' rights, and created more access to opportunities. In fact, these results fortify our next steps. We will continue to fight for a world where every child can get a good education, and anyone looking for an opportunity to work or start a business can find one, where no family fears the cost of groceries or chooses between an electric bill or filling a prescription. A world that is welcoming to all and embraces the notion that our diversity is indeed our strength, and where children who look like mine don't have to think twice about where they belong. A world where kindness is contagious and everyone being worthy of respect is a societal norm. See, the work doesn't stop, even if it feels like the earth just did. Nothing can contain the wild hearts of Americans seeking peace and justice. No constraints have been able to keep us from pursuing something more, something better, something beautiful for all. So rest assured, we will continue to press on. And as we approach the next curve of our path, I simply offer my heart and my hand to the whole of Illinois. At no point have I ever felt the salience of these words more truthfully. Our only way forward is together. Thank you, and with that, I'll pass it back to Governor Pritzker to answer questions from the media.
Thanks, Juliana.
Hey, Governor.
Yep. Jeremy.
I know we talked about veto session before in the last week, but it's going to be a lot. It seems like it's going to be a lot different with the energy now. Are there any state laws that are currently on the books? You just talked about several strides made in the last 5 years in response to the first Trump term, but are there any state laws on the books now that you think warrant some kind of review to see, as a precaution, to see if they need to be strengthened, that perhaps could be taken up in veto session or lame duck in light of any possible federal action the Trump administration may take against them?
Yeah, thank you for asking the question. It's an extraordinarily relevant question. As you can imagine, in months past, and indeed over years past, we've thought a lot about, what happens if the administration in Washington changes, if the tone changes, what would have a negative effect on Illinois, and how do we shore up and make sure we're protecting people here. So we've done a lot of work on that, and I think you've seen that in some of the bills that were passed in the last session and the session before, and even over the summer as we thought about what more needs to be done. Yesterday, I had a meeting with my senior staff to talk about exactly this. Indeed, I talked to some other governors around the country about the things that they're looking at doing. And so we're gathering, I would call it a list of things that we may need to address. Maybe not during a veto session, but maybe. It can be done in the new year. There's time to do that. But suffice to say that we have a lot of work that we're looking at doing. But I feel like a lot of that work has been done over the last 5.5 years to protect the people of Illinois from something, terrible happening at the federal level or some attack on Illinois residents.
Any specific topic areas?
You can imagine what all of it, healthcare, reproductive rights, you can go down the list of, there are areas where I think, you can imagine the people who woke up on Wednesday morning and saw the results, if they didn't already see them on Tuesday night. And there are many people whose lives and livelihoods are at risk, and there are many people who cried at the result because they know what impact it may have on their families. So think about them.
Governor,
Yes.
What can the state do if Trump withholds federal funding for police grants, he goes through the mass deportations? And then secondly, in retrospect, do you think Biden should have dropped out earlier to make room for other Democrats?
On the first question, to the extent that these things are nonpartisan grants that are decided by independent groups within the agencies, which happens for most grants, it would be illegal for the Trump administration to stop those grants from flowing, and so we would take action if we saw that happening. Trying to think about any other grant-related stuff. The other.
He claims that he would survive legal challenges.
No, I don't know what to say except that it would be illegal if he did it, and I presume that the courts would find it so. We certainly would take action and work with our Attorney General to do so.
And then regarding Biden,
I mean, look, 107 days, I think that's how many days that Kamala Harris had to run that campaign. And so that's an extraordinarily short amount of time. She did an extraordinary job of, making it, as competitive as she could. But more time would have been better. Yeah.
So, Governor, what's next for you? And I have a follow-up.
Well, I talked about the things that we're doing right now.
Politically, what's next for you? Third term, run for president? What's the plan?
I as you know, the work that I do now as governor is work that I love doing. And there is, in the wake of the Tuesday election, I think back to my first days in office, my first 2 years in office, where Donald Trump was president, and we had to defend Illinois against an awful lot of policies that the Trump administration was imposing that we needed to make sure we were addressing. And so I think that work is going to continue. And I don't have anything to announce today, but I promise you, Mary Ann, you'll be among the first to know if I have something to announce about running for re-election, and I have no plans for anything else.
Can you talk about what happened for the Democrats? Because it turns out that Biden got 81 million votes in 2020. I know we're still counting, but Harris got 55 million. What happened? Where did those 15 million go?
Yeah.
Trump got about the same
Yeah.
as he did in 2020.
Yeah, I don't know, and I think it would be premature for all of us to draw conclusions today. You have to look at the data before you can draw conclusions. And yet you turn on the television and everybody's spouting, what happened? Is there some policy change that should have been implemented? Should there have been some different candidate? Should something else have happened? I don't know, and I think that we have to stop, take a breath. Democrats certainly should look, over the next couple of months at the data across every state and draw some conclusions. Here's what I want to say, though, about Illinois. Interestingly, with all of the improvement that Donald Trump had across the country and in Illinois in terms of his margin, if you look just below that and all the way down the ballot in Illinois, Democrats won every seat in the General Assembly that it already had, and we won in races that I think people didn't expect, at county board races, taking control of the McLean County Board, for example, coroners races. Literally, if you look, people clearly bifurcated, and made decisions different down the ballot than they did at the top of the ballot, and so I'm proud of that. I think that's a result of the policies that Democrats have had in Illinois and the approval of the voters about those. It's a result of organizing the Democratic Party of Illinois, which was not organized a couple of years ago, right? It was almost moribund if you go back 2.5 years. And so a lot has been done to rebuild the scaffolding and the infrastructure of the party. And remember that Republicans in Illinois were projecting that they would win 5 seats in the General Assembly, and they didn't. And there were a lot of competitive races all across the state, and Democrats fared very well.
Governor, can you talk about
Olivia, sorry, I'm just kidding. Yeah.
Are you coordinating with other Democratic governors to kind of fortify some of those Democratic values? As I know that you have in the past right now, are those conversations happening? And if so, in what policy areas?
Yeah, I think I mentioned it earlier. The answer is I've talked to other governors. It's been a day since the election, day and a half now, I guess. So we all, I think, we have like mind about protecting certain rights and making sure that we're going to be able to withstand, 4 years of a Donald Trump presidency, and also the areas where we might work with the administration, whatever those may be. So there's a lot of discussion going on, certainly among Democratic governors. But I have to say, I talked to Republican and Democratic governors, and when you're governing, I mean, there's a lot that you have to deal with that is just common across the board about, things that you need to do in your state. And so those are conversations that are going to be ongoing.
Yeah, but can you talk a little bit about the crumbling of the blue wall? Democrats put so much effort here in Illinois, going to Wisconsin, going to Michigan, even Pennsylvania and whatnot, and yet all three of those states turned red. Is there a chance that people there were rubbed the wrong way by, progressive people from Illinois coming and trying to influence? I mean, explain what happened with the blue wall.
Craig, I really can't, because you can't make a judgment about what happened in each of the states without looking at the demographics, how people turned out in what areas, and really examining it closely. And I don't have the data. I haven't seen anybody show up with an analysis of the data. A lot of people with opinions, and certainly Republicans are spouting off their opinions about what Democrats have done wrong in order to lose an election. But the reality is it's going to take a little while, I think, before we have real answers.
Did Democrats underestimate or play the wrong hand with the economy? Because that seems to be such a big issue for why people changed, because they just didn't like the way things were going and voted for change, even if they maybe didn't like the candidate that was on the other side.
I think that you get dealt the economy that is in front of you. The government doesn't control the economy, and so you get dealt the hand that you get, and then you have to, as a political matter, you play the hand that is dealt to you. So all I can say is that there were challenges. There's certainly, I think everybody believes, Democrats and Republicans, that people have suffered from inflation. Whose fault that is, it's a whole other conversation. But people suffered from inflation. People, people felt like their reproductive rights were under attack, and so there were a lot of people who showed up to vote around that issue. And I'm proud to say that the organization that I founded, Think Big America, we won the vast majority of the referenda across the country that protected women's reproductive rights. So tens of millions of women across the country have rights that they didn't have codified before, rights that are now codified in their constitutions. Yeah. Sorry, let me get this lady back here and I'll come back up. Yeah.
Given, I guess, the margins that President-elect Trump won by, I understand what you said about Illinois, but do you think that the party needs to move closer to the center? I guess, what's next for the Democratic Party?
I don't think we can make an analysis about, ideology or some particular issue at this point. Again, a lot of work needs to be done. I think we'll all have some answers over the next month or two, having looked at the data and seeing why people voted as they did. But it's really a hard judgment to make a day and a half after the election. I'm going to get this, and then I'll get you, Amanda. Yeah.
I want to ask about the Gombe report from last week. Your office is saying that there could be as much as a $3 billion deficit without some changes or reworking. How are you thinking about filling that? And is income tax or other kind of personal tax on the table for this upcoming year?
The General Assembly and I have balanced the budget every year. When I came into office, the projections were that everything was going to go south immediately and we wouldn't be able to recover from it. We balanced the budget every year. Indeed, we ran surpluses. So we're going to balance the budget again. This is a forecast that's made every year, looking 5 years forward, assuming no changes in any laws. Forget about revenue. It's just generally no changes in law, no changes in efficiencies, et cetera. It's a kind of a flat projection forecast, and it's been wrong every year, I guess you might say, or we've defeated it every year. And so I think we're going to submit a budget to the General Assembly. I know I'm going to submit a budget to the General Assembly in February, like I have every year over the past 6 years, and it'll be balanced. Yeah, Amanda.
Governor, I have a couple. First of all, the president-elect is somebody who is very clear that he wants to take revenge on those who have wronged him. Without clout, particularly Senator Durbin, now in a minority U.S. Senate, how do you plan to pursue your agenda in Washington should Illinois need money for various
Yeah, just to be clear, it's not all about money, but that's one factor. As you know, we've had federal storm emergencies, other kinds of things that have affected the state of Illinois, and the federal government has programs to address those, and I expect that we'll be able to access those as needed. All I can say is that the federal government, separate and apart from the politics of the person who controls the office of president, has a certain pace to it and a working order to it that continued to a large degree during the first Trump administration, and so we intend to access that as we have. But any political actions that the president takes, I think, will be work to his detriment politically, and I think that to the extent that they break the law, because politics in many cases can't be imposed upon things that are due to the various states. So I feel reasonably okay about our ability to withstand anything that the Trump administration brings to us, but I can't predict the future. Yeah. Paris. Sorry.
So on the issue of education infrastructure, he wants to abolish the Department of Education. Does that mean less federal money for schools?
Yep.
More financial problems for school districts like Chicago, and then infrastructure, say the state doesn't get federal money for things like the Red Line extension, O'Hare, or other big infrastructure needs
Yeah.
that the state relies on federal dollars for?
Again, sorry, just to be clear, the federal infrastructure dollars, again, are decided on an apolitical, non-political basis. That's how they're supposed to be decided. And indeed, we've, trust me, I've, contacted lots of people in the federal government that I know, elected officials or, appointed political officials, to make sure that they know what Illinois needs. And I can say, for certain that, the independence of those divisions of the agencies really are making the decisions, and we've been very fortunate because we are at the center of the supply chain for the nation, and so we've received a lot of support. Indeed, we're one of the largest recipients of transportation-related infrastructure dollars. So.
Is there anything you can do to help all the Blackhawks and Bulls fans who pay millions to Comcast, and our state needs their money because they can't watch sports at night? Is there something the state can do to help these consumers?
Haven't been asked to be involved in that by any of the parties that you're referring to, so I don't know if there are. If they should make themselves known if that's the case. But the fact is that private businesses, other than the normal things that government can do to support private businesses, which we do, ought to be able to manage their own futures together. I also would like to be able to access these things more easily, but it's very difficult to do. Yeah. Thank you.